Welcome to the Modeling Lifestyle, where we celebrate how modelers have embraced their modeling and friendships as a lifestyle. We discuss how modeling can become a life passion and lead to lifelong friendships. The goal of the modeling lifestyle is to preserve the modeling and interests of leading modelers in the modeling industry. The modeling lifestyle is sponsored by NGNC, a market leader in quarter-inch scale modeling with products from over 50 vendors and the largest collection of out-of-stock model paints with over 9,000 bottles available. And now to Jim Kellow, MMR and host of the Modeling Lifestyle.
I love the sound of a whistle.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Hope you enjoy the show. Most importantly, hope you come back often and tell your friends about us. This is a show that not only introduces you to some really great modelers, but some people who have made significant contributions to our great hobby and have made our hobby a major part of their own lifestyles. I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening on YouTube. If you have any questions or comments, if you can use the chat function on YouTube. And as soon as we know you've asked a question, then we'll get it to the guest and get you an answer. But I really do appreciate you joining us live this evening. All of our shows that we do are run by volunteers. So if you feel that you have a little time that you can volunteer to help us, we certainly would appreciate it. My email is jimkellow@newtracksmodeling.com. And I'd love to hear from you. Also, I'd like you to make sure that you are a subscriber to our website, newtracksmodeling.com. And when you go to the website, if you'll subscribe to it, then you'll find out about the regular Wednesday shows that we do, all of which are available live on Zoom, as well as on YouTube. But to get the login for the Zoom shows, you have to be a subscriber to our website. While you're at our website, you'll take a look at our scholarship program. We had a very successful first year, and we're really looking forward to the second year, which is starting now. So I hope that you'll take a look at it, and if you can feel comfortable with it, make a contribution to us so that we can help the young model railroaders with their college educations. Tonight, I want to introduce a really talented modeler, Ben Poole. Ben is not only a talented modeler, but he's made a tremendous, major impact on our hobby and continues to do it every day. So I'm really pleased that we're able to introduce Ben to you this evening and for you to be able to get to know him a little better. So Ben, welcome. Thanks so much for taking the time tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start by finding out a little bit about your background, Ben. Who is Ben?
All right, let's see. So I'm in sales in the technology sector, and I've been doing that for most of my career. I when I got out of college, I tried being a professional musician for a while. I had a master's degree in music and playing trumpet. And frankly, I realized I wasn't disciplined enough to be really good. You got to be, the top 0.5% of 1% if you really want to make decent money and have all the albums and things like that, right? I hustled to get gigs, so I did well at that, which kind of made me think in the back of my mind, well, I can sell better than I can play. And I didn't want to end up being, that proverbial starving musician that all us dads tell our daughters to stay away from, right? That kind of. I didn't want to be that. Frankly, you're only one missed high note away from having somebody replace you when you're a professional musician. I did have good success at it. I played in a Grammy-winning polka band for a number of years. I played second trumpet, and therefore I became a voting member in the Grammys. Did that for about 32 years, but it just wasn't for me. So back in my early 30s, I switched to technology sales. I worked for IBM for a long time. Got paid a whole lot better. And frankly, yeah, when you hustle, then you actually get money for that. So I think I found my calling. So I do that. I continue today. I don't work for IBM anymore, but I work for a technology software company. But the music part of my soul, I still do that. I sing in the local cathedral choir here in Atlanta. So at least I continue to feed the music part of my life. But with regard to modeling, I know that's why we're here. I've been pretty much interested in model trains since I was 6 years old. And I know I probably should go into a little bit about that, right? That's why we're here?
If you'd like to, we'd love to hear about it. That's why we're here.
All right. So for me, it started out, and I'm sure this is the same story just about every model railroader has. At some age when you're a kid, you get a little train set, maybe for Christmas or your birthday or something like that. So I got, at age 6, I got a little Reveille train set, Revell, I guess. Yeah, there we are. So that's about age 8. I had a circle of track, a few cars, and for me and my dad, we did modeling together. It started with the just a little piece of plywood with green grass, right? You put it on top, and it kind of advanced a little bit. We got that 4x8 that you see there in the picture, 4 feet by 8 feet. Piece of plywood. We kind of built it in my room, and you can see that great artwork I was taped up to the wall in the background there, right? I was not a very good artist, but that little circle of track turned into this layout. And for any of you people on the West Coast, you might recognize that is a balsa wood model of the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, right, you can almost tell. And it's got a train going across it, which was better for the layout than just having a Golden Gate Bridge sitting up on the shelf. And we did that. The whole modeling effort with my dad was we lived in Pasadena, California at the time, and we took a family trip up to San Francisco. And we, what do you do when you're there? You go look at the sites. And so we looked at the Golden Gate Bridge, and anybody from out there would know if you go down by Fort Mason, you go underneath the bridge and you can look up at one of those pillars, right? The big towers, and you can see what it's made out of, including they have an example of the main cable, and it's super fat, right? And so it fascinated me. So when we got home, my dad and I thought, well, let's try to build a balsa wood model of that. And that's what you see right there. Put that on the layout. And I'm sure like every other 8-year-old, I had an allowance, right? Doing the chores around the house. And every week I would take my allowance and I would ride on my bicycle about a mile up to the original whistle stop, the train store on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. It's still there. Whenever I go back to Los Angeles for work, I go and I visit them, just to have that little memory. And I would go there and I would ogle, the N scale stuff, because this was all N scale. And once in a while I had enough money, I could go buy a car. And so over the years, I bought more and more cars, like we all did, right? And it was fun. My dad and I had a ball doing that. Anyway, so that's how we all got started in N scale.
Why? What drew you to the hobby of model railroading? I mean, there's a lot of hobbies out there. Why model railroading? So that's a great question. Obviously started with the little circle of track, but I used to build model tanks and model aircraft and ships. And, back then, frankly, if we had all the technology that we have today, had it back then, I would have been making movies of blowing up tanks out in the backyard. Cause that's what, right? My friends and I, we would go and spend our allowance, get some tanks, glue them together, make them as good as you possibly could make them, paint them, put the figures up in the turret, take them out in the backyard and blow them up with firecrackers, and try to get a picture of that happening, that moment, right? And you never did, because we didn't have video cameras back then. So we blew up a lot of stuff. Once in a while, you caught one in your hand, right? We all did that. You blew up the firecracker in your hand by accident. And that's back in the day when your parents would basically tell you, as soon as the sun came up, go outside and don't come back until it's dark. I don't want to see you again until it's dark. And so we were, up to our own devices, doing all kinds of things that kids do. So anyway, so N scale was the start of my life. Obviously the ships and the planes and the tanks and stuff was along the way. And I'm sure, like a lot of us, once you get into your teenage years, all those things are less important than those girls, right? And sports and all the other stuff, right? And you're trying to figure out if you're going to make it to college, and if you are, where are you going to go? And so all of that stuff kind of takes precedence. And then of course, now you're in college and you're still girls.
Um, but there's also beer. Sorry. So you learn how to drink beer and then how to get drunk, another good learning lesson. And frankly, all of the modeling stuff kind of went on the back burner until I got married, and then I had 2 kids, both daughters. And I thought, let's see if they might have an interest, because I still have some of this train stuff right tucked away in boxes. So we did. I was introduced to G scale. What was it? LGB, right? I haven't dabbled that in a while. But we did the LGB. Now we did a circle around the tree, and all of a sudden, for me, it was rekindled. Both girls loved it. They got a kick out of it. It was fun, but they liked the dollhouse better. These are young, right? When they were like 4 and 6, that kind of thing. So it was pretty much dad playing with the trains, and the daughters said, okay, that's fine. We get dad time, but it's a dad thing. And then when they wanted daughter time, it was dollhouses. So I built a couple dollhouses for them, right? You get the kit and it's all wood, and they're really nice, but it's like modeling in that 1 inch to 1 foot scale. So we did that too. But I still had the N scale stuff in the back of my mind. And I'm probably boring people, but we'll get through this fast. My mom and dad moved to Vermont right around when my kids were getting into middle school. And so they lived in Bellows Falls, which is where the Green Mountain Railroad is today, right? And of course, the predecessor railroad was the Rutland. And then, of course, I got so fascinated with that, we would do train rides on the Green Mountain from Bellows Falls up to Chester and back. And so the whole concept of, prototypical railroading and being able to do things for preservation was also fascinating. So all of a sudden, I'm finding myself reading everything I could read about railroads in Vermont. So the Central Vermont, the Canadian National, Canadian Pacific, the Rutland, like I said, the Green Mountain. And so I got a whole library of all these books, these hardcover books that probably nobody would ever want anymore. But boy, I read and read and read for that. So, sorry, again, all this information dump, but not too long after that, we had the family trip to Colorado. And that's where I saw the Durango and Silverton and the Cumberland and Toltec. We went on them. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, it's narrow gauge. Love this. And I'm not kidding. While we were still in Durango, we did the rafting trip down the Animas River, right? We did all the things you do when you got kids and go on a vacation, but it was the train thing for me. All of a sudden I'm like, I got to sell all these Vermont books and I got to go buy Colorado books. I got to swap my empire out, right? And so I also then found HON3 because this company Blackstone, they're owned by Soundtracks. They do HON3. They did a lot back then. I think they're dialing it back a little bit now. So I ended up buying some Blackstone stuff, got a few books, and then I started selling all the Vermont. And trust me, I had N scale Vermont everything. If it had any connection with Vermont and it was in N scale, I went and bought it. Right. So I got a room full of that stuff, a room full of books. So I'm selling that stuff off to fund this new empire in HO narrow gauge. And I was fortunate in my searching to find somebody who's sort of become a friend now, lived in Chicago. And remember, I'm in Atlanta, right? Mm-hmm. He was selling an HO narrow gauge, HON3 layout that was mostly built out. And it was 2 feet by 16 feet. I think we might have a photo or two of that. And so there we go. So I flew to Chicago, rented a car, an SUV, and loaded this thing in 4 sections in the back and drove it home. And then in the period of time, I kind of built more onto it, right? Added to it. And it was great. Loved it. And so all of a sudden now I'm like, no more Vermont, no more N scale. Now it's all Colorado and it's narrow gauge. And what I found out is this is going to sound strange because I know we have some of these people that might be listening. I was introduced to rivet counters. and anybody who's a railroad model, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not a rivet counter. I appreciate somebody who can scratch build anything and make it look anywhere close to realistic. That's fantastic. I try to do that myself. Frankly, I'm not very good at it. And if somebody can make a DNR GW mud hen exact, 355 or 455, after the accident, right? Which plow did it have on it, and that sort of thing. It blows me away. And I would love to have things like that on my shelf because they're like museum pieces. But rivet counting is not for me. It doesn't align with the vibe that I have. I like to have fun. Pretty much that first and foremost. I want to have fun, right? And
Yep.
so if we fast forward to about 2019, might even be it when COVID started to kick in. So beginning of 2020, I ran across, as I'm searching for fun, right? You got to keep that in the back of your mind. I ran across Al Judy's ON30 Railroading Facebook group. And oh my God, here were a bunch of people. And by a bunch, I mean, back then there might have been 4,500, 5,000, and it's probably up to 10,000 now. A lot of people. And they're all like that. They want to have fun. They want to make stuff up. If it's funky looking or a little like that would never be prototypical, who cares? Right? Where maybe there's one that was ever made somewhere. We're gonna go make that. So we, Al likes to, I don't know if he dubbed us, but the group, but the black sheep. We're the black sheep of the model railroading community. And I finally felt like I was at home. I had found a home in the modeling community. So there you go. Long story. Sorry about that. Take a sip.
So that's why you selected ON30 as the scale that you wanted to model.
Yes. And so now I'm, not now, but for the last several years, I've been selling off the HON3 empire to fund the ON30 empire. Yeah.
I got you. What part of model railroading do you most enjoy?
I like a lot of it, right? But I think the part that fascinates me the most is telling stories through scenes. Trying to make some sort of, the scene is, you could see the scene, and first of all, you might not know if it's real or if it's a fake scene, right? That's always nice to have such good quality models and figures and things like that. So if the story is believable, and there's something that's kind of funny and catches my attention. So a lot of things I do when I set up scenes, I'll talk about, the story behind the scene is what's going on in the Major League Baseball right now. I follow the Atlanta Braves. I live in Atlanta, and right now they're leading the Major League Baseball. And so I might, in one of my little descriptions of the scene, we're talking about two guys and they're having a conversation, and one of them's worried about a valve gear on a locomotive needs to be lubricated, and the other guy wants to, and I'll say this in the scene, the other guy wants to go have lunch and he doesn't care about that. But they're both baseball fans, and the one follows the Braves and the other likes the Yankees. And so all of a sudden I'm having a little paragraph story talking. I like doing stuff like that. It kind of captures my imagination, and I think other people enjoy reading it. So what I'll do, and frankly, let me get back to Al. Al gave me kind of a jump start in ON30. We talked a lot on the phone, not just over Facebook. And he agreed to make a micro layout for me to kind of get me started. And it's just 4 feet by 4 feet. And I think we may have a picture of it later in the show. But it really helped because all of a sudden now I had a working layout, right? It's just 2 loops of track, a lower loop and an upper loop, but beautifully built. Al is an absolute artist. So I had a museum piece that I put in my little home office, and I could run my little 2 locomotives with some rolling stock. But it got me started in ON30. And so when I came up with this thing that I find fascinating to make little scenes, I needed more figures. And so that's how I ran across Ian Fanges. He is a genius at painting figures. And so I bought some of his figures. Now he's in Australia, so you do have to wait a little, wait a week or two, for the things to arrive. Right. But I would put those figures, matter of fact, you probably can't see, I've got some back here. It's too far away. Yeah. I would put the figures and they would be like talking to each other on on the little 4x4 layout, right? And so now that I got two figures standing there talking to each other, I got to figure out, well, what are they saying to each other? So I have to make up a story, but it has to be kind of aligned with what the scene is. So, all of a sudden, that's what I really like about modeling, is taking really good quality, the best, looking locomotives, the best looking rolling stock on a beautiful layout or in a beautiful diorama or a module or something, and making a scene that I can photograph. I'm composing the photo and then coming up with a story. So I think, again, I'm kind of long-winded tonight, but to answer your question, that the question you asked earlier, that's what I like to do. That's my modeling for me.
Well, I've heard a lot of people say that how fantastic your scenes are, but a lot of us may not have seen any of them, may not know what you're really talking about. So why don't we take a little time here and
Sure.
See some photos of your scenery and go from there.
Sounds good. And one other thing actually I use this as an example. So you got the guy flipping the bird there. He's sitting on the on the yellow handcar. His name is Larry Getzoff, right? Now, it sounds funny because I'm saying it to you, but it looks better when you read it. The pun names, right? We also have Rusty Nail, like Rusty Nail, right? It looks better when you see it written. I have Benefactor, Ollie to booger. I'll eat a booger. Right? They're stupid, but they're funny and they make me laugh. So I figure they might make other people laugh. Mac and cheese, bologna. Right? And sorry, I make myself laugh. And frankly, some of them get a little saucy. Hugh Jass, right? Mike Rochburns, right? Females, we have females too. Mona Lot, right? So some of them I really can't even say in a public forum. But then I'll have a story like, one of the guys sitting on the side, the one with his, he's with a little blue hat on. Well, he's from the von Strapp family, right? And they moved here from Austria many, many years ago. And when they came across, the parents with the kids, came across Staten Island, and they decided to drop the von because they didn't want to be viewed as, Germanic. So they were just the Strapp family. Well, their number one son sitting right there, his name is Jacques. So that's Jacques Strapp. Right. So, sorry. That makes me laugh, right? Jacques Strapp. Okay, never mind. You get the point, right? So yep. Let's go to the next one. Oh, all right. So, and by the way, so this little module you're looking at there, I built that. Frankly, I can't remember where I got the work car. I think I might have gotten that off eBay, but Pete Reisiger built the pickup truck, right, with all the tools in the back. So these are, Pete is one of the people that I've been delighted. He's a friend. He became a friend, and he's made some stuff for me, and I've helped him a little bit. And so I love being able to have his stuff on these modules, and then I'll try to call out whenever I put up a story. I'll say at the end of the story, who built what, right? So-and-so built the truck, so-and-so built, the layout or whatever. But on this, I'm forgetting, actually, I can't remember the story, but we got, a guy is standing here like this, and he's got a rag in his hand, and he's getting ready to do some work. The other guy has a toolbox, so they're going to get goofy names, and so that's the thing I've got. I should pull up a file. I got a lot of goofy names, and give you a couple of them. Oh, here's another, the guy sitting there, his name's Colin Oscopy. Right. Yeah. You have to, that's what I say, it's better when you read it, because then you say it out loud. The other guy with the toolbox, Warren T, right? He shows up with the toolbox. Anyway, let's go to the next one. You get the point.
Yeah. All
right. So same here. Actually, Al Judy, that's one of your locomotives. I'm pretty sure Hillsgrove is you, right?
Yep.
Yep. And it's the same thing we got. Now look at these figures. So Ian painted all four of these guys. They have plaid flannel jackets, and they're wearing, denim jeans, and they have boots. And I'm telling you, they look so realistic. It blows your mind. And especially in the photo, right? They're doing the actions that they're doing. the clothing that they have, the amount of dirt on their shoes or on their knees, on their pants. Ian is the genius that makes things look so realistic in O scale. It just blows my mind whenever I see them. And I've got a lot of figures now from Ian. And Ian paints them, right? So they come from Andean models, or they come from Model U in the UK, and then he paints them and makes them. He brings them to life, frankly. And then I just set up these scenes, right? This is on the layout. And I try to come up with a story. What is the scene representing? Well, these guys are, the guy standing up there, his name is Burned Out. He, right. He noticed that there was a crack in one of the pieces of wood that's holding in all of the lumber, right? So he's up there trying to fix that so that the stuff doesn't all spill out. And then, like any road crew you might see working on the highway in the United States, you got three guys staring at the one guy doing the job. One guy's working through, right? And they're going to tell him about what he's doing wrong and all of that. But I would make a story about that. And then I might, toward the end of the story, mention that and the reason he jumped up there to do the work is because he's agitated. He wants to get back to town in time to meet up with his girlfriend who works at Wagner's, market. And I would give her a name, right? Not Mona Lot, maybe, but some other name. Anita Dump. Right? Who would name their anyway? So he wants to get back as soon as he can because he's got a hot date tonight. And these other three guys don't give a crap. They're like, yeah, whatever, you're fixing it and you're not doing a good enough job, right? So it would be a little story. So there you go. All right. So I'm taking too long. Let's keep going.
All right.
All right. So now there's a group in ON30. It's called the Mid-Hudson Meet Group, Mid-Hudson, right? And they get together twice a year in April and in October. And I was, now that I've became part of this ON30 community, I go to those meets. They're in upstate New York. And if you read real closely above the word Hudson on that building, Mid-Hudson Meet, it's Littlefields, and Alan Littlefield is the host of the Mid-Hudson Meet, MEET. And so this is a little joke, the building to be called Mid-Hudson Meets, right? And Ed Fillon and Deerfield Lasers, he made the kit for that. And this particular one, Newell, I can't remember Newell's last name. Larry, what's Newell's last name? Sage, thank you. Newell Sage. Getting old. Newell Sage built that and painted it, and then he gave that to me, and I put it on the layout. Along with some other buildings, right? You got the little backdrop there, but now we're having a conversation. A little bit of a challenge. The guys show up with their 042 Porter, and they're running light right now, and they stop to catch up with what's going on with the news. And the two guys sitting down on the porch over there, Mid-Hudson Meets, just got done butchering an elk, right? An elk came in, and so they butchered that, and they're outside trying to catch some fresh air. The one guy's eating a tuna fish sandwich. You make up stories to go along with that, and that's it. It's just a scene. It's a beautiful locomotive, these beautifully painted figures, some gorgeous buildings, and that we call that tail end Tuesday, by the way, because we're looking at the tail end of that locomotive. It might be weathered Wednesday, or it might be front end Friday, right? These are the little vignettes or whatever that have become very popular on Al's ON30 railroading Facebook group. And so I do those. I just post some things and I make up stories. There you go. Next. What's next?
Yeah, but Ben, the nice part about it is there are believable scenes.
You
can almost walk yourself into the scene. It's that believable. Really.
Yeah. So interesting you say that, because I learned again from the guys in the Mid-Hudson group. I learned about how to take photos too. Like I would just take my, I got an iPhone, right? And I would just take pictures, and maybe I would edit them a little bit, and then I would start posting them and make up stories. And like Dan Walshan told me, if you change how you're holding the phone and you put the lens at the bottom so that you're almost at eye level with the figures, it's going to make the scenes have a little bit more life. And I tell you what, he's right. And so half of my photos are from looking down, and the newer ones are from looking up, right? And that's really cool. So like this one, actually have the story here. I'll read it to you. It's tail end Tuesday in Soggy Bottom on this beautiful 4th of July, right? That's how I started. And by the way, the name of my layout is Soggy Bottom. Hugh Jass on the right is catching up with Bo Loney in front of the old garage on Main Street in the Squackville section of town. These two lads are among the few in Soggy Bottom who follow the Atlanta Braves during the summer, and they are especially happy that the team has been on fire lately and now leads the entire Major League Baseball. Speaking of baseball and getting past first base, the fireworks will be held this evening over the Deep Cut Canal in Soggy Bottom. Hugh has a hot date with Anita Dump and has been saving up his work bonuses for a month to be sure he can afford many drinks. Bo will also be attending with the fireworks with his girlfriend, Marcia Mello. They've been dating since high school. Let's hope the lads don't drink too much to impact their game time performance. And then now that's so the story's done. And then I say Pete Reisiger built the pickup truck and Ian Fain just painted the figures. There you go. There's the story. All right.
That's a beautiful scene. No question about it.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Well, let's take a break from your pictures for a minute here and try to bring some of your friends into this discussion.
All right.
First person I'd like to introduce is Al Judy. Al, thanks so much for taking the time to join Ben tonight. We really do appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with Ben?
Sure. Like Ben said, like every other modeler, started out in the beginning, about 6 years old with I actually got my first train set when I was 2, but that was a Marx, so we won't count that. My first HO scale train set, I was 6, which would have been 1964. And of course, I was already hooked on trains. We had two railroads ran through our hometown. Lots of relatives worked on the railroads, so saw them every day. Just, it's funny. I have siblings that could care less. Me, I just loved every time the train come. I ran to the edge of the track to see him come.
Yep.
I don't know, it's just one of those things. You're either born with it or you aren't. So modeled my whole life. Owned a hobby shop for 10 years. It was a train shop. We didn't sell models or anything like that, just trains. Now I have the Facebook groups. I admin or own well over a dozen groups, 40,000 members in the unique members in the groups. So that keeps me kind of busy, but I still model every day, all day. Always trying new things. I like all aspects of the hobby, other than I'm not much on electronics, but all the modeling, the carpentry work, scratch building, painting, detailing, love photography. I post a picture every day online on all the groups, just to keep the activity level up. But so yeah, just like everybody else, modeling my whole life. I met Ben, like he said, when he contacted me through the group and started talking about ON30, and then he asked me to build the layout for him. So I double dipped on that when I built the layout for Ben, and then I built it in 8 days and wrote a magazine article called 8 Days in June. This was during COVID. And the point of the article was that, people that say they don't have enough time to ever build a layout. Yeah. Baloney.
That's right. 8 days.
That's right. 8 days and I took pictures every day from the stack of lumber on day 1 till the on day 8. We were taking the pictures for the magazine article, and about 2 days later, Ben showed up with an SUV to take it home.
Right.
But go ahead, Ben.
I would say long ride from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was worth it.
But a great view in the rear view mirror, though.
Exactly. And trust me, every time I hit a bump on I-81, I'm like, oh no, I didn't break anything.
We packed it really well. We packed it really well. But so now Ben and I have become very good friends. He comes to, I host 2 shows in Harrisburg every year, 2 O-scale events. We go to the Mid-Hudson show 2 times a year. Now, Ben did say that his favorite thing was making up stories, but that's for people that have never seen Ben shop. I think Ben's best aspect is shopping, because like I said, we're really good friends, but Ben and I have the same taste. We both like high-end, good quality merchandise. And so when we're at shows, Ben's my nemesis.
Yes, that's right.
We're trying to see. He goes to one side of the room and I go to the other, and we meet in the middle and compare who got the best deal.
Yeah. And we're not talking about Gucci handbags, trust me.
Right. So,
Yep.
But yeah, so we've become very good friends. We talk regularly and see each other at the shows. Ben helps out now at my shows.
Yes.
So he's part of the red shirt gang, and
Right.
he helps with setup and tear down and helping the vendors and the guests, and so we appreciate that.
Yep. And we have, remember what I said beginning? We have fun.
We do. We do.
Fun. Yes.
ON30. I mean, I modeled HO for close to 40 years. And just like Ben said, the rivet counters just drove me away from it. I went from modeling mainline class 1 railroads to freelance modeling, a lot of logging, industrial stuff where I could do what I wanted and make up a story for it. And then just happened to be in a hobby shop and picked up an ON30 Shea, and I'm like, what is this? Late 90s. I'm like, wow, this is perfect. So I bought the engine and a couple of cars. I think I bought 2 engines that day and a couple of cars, took them home, ran them back and forth on some track. And 2 weeks later, I was advertising my 40-year HO collection. I think I had something like 60 brass locomotives and 400 or 500 pieces of rolling stock, all gone. Sold it all.
Yep.
Went ON30, all in. And yeah, now I'm just hooked on it. I love the camaraderie. There's no judging. Everybody's helpful. It's just a great group of guys, and a lot of talented guys in ON30. So
yeah. Yep.
You know, Al, what you're saying is I've heard so many times from different ON30 modelers. It's you don't go to shows, you go to gatherings.
Right.
You know, it's not just going to see another model railroad. You're going to see a friend, and that's it's a different feel talking to an ON30 modeler than it is in any other scale that I've encountered.
Yep. I mean, when we set up the shows, most shows, everybody's been to train shows. You go in, you go up and down the aisles in a fire hall, maybe make a second pass, and you go home. When we set up the shows, we put chairs in front of the tables so people can sit down, talk to the vendors, look at whatever they're selling, whatever they're working on, whatever the case might be. And our June show is 2 days long, and I mean everybody comes and they stay the 2 days. We have great food there, and they're upset when it's over. They didn't get to see enough in 2 days.
Yeah.
No beer, right?
No, unfortunately, my insurance company and the church where we hold it frown on firearms and alcohol. No.
Well, thanks so much for sharing a little bit of information with us, Al.
Yeah.
Next, I'd like to introduce another one of Ben's close friends, Larry Knapp. Larry, thanks so much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I met Ben a couple of years ago, and he rescued a layout that I had built that I had to move my house and probably wasn't going to be able to fit in the new house. And he graciously took it off my hands, and I hope he's enjoying it now.
Yeah, actually, couple things on that. So after Al got me jump started with the 4-foot by 4-foot micro layout, Larry actually lived in Charlotte, which is a heck of a lot closer to Atlanta, right? It's only like a 4-hour drive than Harrisburg is. And when he and I were talking, I said, "Oh, you have these 2 modules, basically a big layout. I'd love to come get them." And so we worked it out, and I went and met with him, and frankly, I bought more stuff than just the 2 modules because Larry's extremely talented.
Don't you always?
Yeah. I was saying, back to what I was saying is, I know a really good quality thing when I see it, and maybe I have more money than smart sometimes. That's not fair. So I want to be able to support, and pay for things that are worth paying for. And so Larry, absolutely. So you also then jump started, because now not only did I have a 4x4 micro layout, I had your 2 modules that then frankly I made 4 more modules to attach to those, right, to make them somewhat identical and build it out. So that was the next level of jump starting, right?
So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Toronto, and my parents moved when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old to a house that was on the CN and CP main line between Toronto and Montreal. So all the passenger trains would fly by there all day, every day. Very, very busy route. And I got hooked, and my dad built me a train set in the basement. And then, just like everybody else, it was 00 gauge, which is trying British, because Canada has, a tie to British stuff. And, did that for a while. Got into military modeling, and then stopped for a while. Then N scale, HO scale, and I met online, I found Paul Templar. I don't know if anyone would ever remember him, but he was one of the first people out there in ON30 that had a website or a forum. So you could go into his forum, and he was in England and a decent modeler, but it was so unique because he was scratch building and he was kit bashing and he was doing all this stuff. And it was super cool. So that got me hooked. The stuff I built that was probably around 2004, 2005. Stuff I sold to Ben was built for the Hickory convention in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Al shows, hang out with Al, Ben. I travel to Harrisburg all the time on business, so I always stop at Al's place whenever I can to aud his amazing work. Don't even want to pull my wallet out because I'd be too afraid of what it would cost me. But and plus I already have a couple hundred locomotives, so it probably can't fit any more in the house anyway. I like to kit bash. I like to scratch build, but more recently I've kind of not been doing that as much. And I have been, but I've been focusing on trying to build a World War I layout in 7mm, which is just slightly larger than ON30, which at some point will be donated to a museum, and then I'll start on some new project. So, Dylan, did you want to show any of the pictures that I sent, or?
Larry, the 7mm that you model, is that narrow gauge 7mm or standard?
Yeah, 7mm works out to be, it's 2-foot gauge.
Okay.
But at 7mm, it's cheating a little bit. I think it's probably like 2 foot 3 inches to represent 2 foot.
Right.
So, this is a diorama I built for my old layout, which is the back of a garage. I thought it turned out pretty realistically.
Yeah.
Obviously, the photo was outside of my backyard when I lived in Charlotte to give it some real looking trees.
Mm-hmm. Those look good.
And we can go to the next one, Dylan. I love to place figures on my layouts too. I've been doing it for a long time and not creating as elaborate stories as Ben does, but I do create stories, and mostly around the folks at the Mid-Hudson meet. They get themselves into all kinds of trouble. They can't talk about it here. And their group on Facebook is private, so I can kind of say or do what I want.
Sometimes modeling copies reality.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to do this because I used to work at a gas station when I was about 15, and there was this old German guy that was in World War II, fought for the Germans, and he would come with a 6-pack of beer and a lawn chair every Saturday, open the lawn chair up, drop the 6-pack of beer beside him, and he'd sit there all day and talk to us because he needed company. I think that's what Dan needs too, right? Dan just needs
Dan right there.
Yeah, this is Dan needs company. He's got a 6-pack of beer. He's hanging out behind the gas station, hoping the guy will talk to him, right?
We love Dan.
Yeah, we love Dan. Dan's fun to pick on.
Yep.
This is a piece of the module, one of the modules that Ben purchased from me.
Yep.
That coaling tower was, I'm going to say kit bash, but it's really scratch built. All I had was a set of plans, and it was much smaller, and I took the plans and I copied them and I pasted them together and then built this giant ore bin. And the ore bin itself with the extension on the end is about 3 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
The two modules were 8 feet long and had an upper ON18 line that would come out of a mine and dump the material into the ore bin and then dump it into cars at the bottom, ON30. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but this is it's an Inglenook layout. So you could actually do switching puzzles on it. If you block one of the sidings off.
Okay, you did not tell me. That's good.
Yeah, so it's actually a puzzle, and it works quite well. You just have to block one of the sidings off.
Yeah. Okay.
We can move to the next one. This is a picture from one of the pictures from one of the modules I have for my World War I layout that ultimately will go to a museum at some point in time. Very difficult to model this scale and this era because there's very little kits available and basically next to nothing you can shake out of a box. You're scratch building everything or taking white metal kits that were developed 20 or 30 years ago and learning how to solder the stuff. And very fidgety. But it is interesting if you kind of move to the next one, Dylan. It's just another module that I have for the World War I layout. It's a lot of white metal pieces, a lot of 3D printing, which we'll get into later, and a lot of figures. I probably have close to 600 figures painted at this point for the layout, plus about another 400 waiting to get painted. Not quite the skill level of Ian, but I'll get there one day, maybe if with enough practice.
Larry, on the previous picture, the bridge, was that 3D printed? Or
no, it's scratch built.
Scratch built?
Yeah. This is a micro layout that I have. My good friend Vern Niner, who passed away about 5 years ago, had a layout, and I built a micro layout to be a connector. So a virtual connector, or we could ship stuff back and forth. The layout's 19 by 39, but it has probably 200 photo ops on it and people and stuff. And most of the structures are scratch built. But this is one of Vern's locomotives that I have on display for this particular picture. So I love this one. It's in my office, and I have display cases all over the place. And most of my equipment is very short and can go around the 8.5-inch radius. So I can pull a locomotive out of the display case and I can run it around for a little while and do some switching and stuff like that. It actually has an Inglenook on it as well. So there's another switching puzzle on this layout. So if I get bored, I can try to switch it out.
And this is just as beautiful in person, maybe even more than on this photo. It's fabulous, absolutely fabulous.
Well, it looks gorgeous on the photo.
Yeah. Yep.
Next one, Dylan.
Oh,
that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, Larry, thank you so very much.
Oh, there's another one.
There's one.
So this is another micro layout that I have. It's 16 inches by 24 inches. And this is just a very quick shot, but these are the Mid-Hudson crew that were scanned and 3D printed, and I painted them. I can't show some other pictures of the layout right now, but the premise of this is it's a nude beach in the Caribbean, and the boys take vacation there all the time, and they smoke their cigars and drink their beer while they try to chat up the ladies on the beach. but this is about the only picture I can show. So,
Well, the scene is great, I'll tell you.
Yeah, very nice.
Well, Larry, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Well, our next friend is Ian Fengus. Ian is from Australia, and if you've never seen his figure painting, you've really missed something. So, Ian, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening.
Thank you, Jim. It's lovely to be and sledge each other.
How did you meet Ben and get to be one of his friends?
It started as a commercial enterprise. Basically, I got loaded with, I think it came from a couple of figures that I had to convert. What happened is we produced a whole lot of figures, and Ian did, and we were selling 20 of the same figures to a particular guy, Scott, because he was producing some kits. And it was selling the figures with the kits. It was part of it. It was an Ian Fengus painted figure. But there was a mix-up, and 20 figures got printed mirrored wrong way. So for American practice, they were facing the wrong. Their hands were in the wrong way. So Ian Femster, who's the guy who owns Andy and Models, said, "Oh, you can have them. I'll sell them to you for $10. You do something with them." So I looked at them and I went, well, I'll change the hats and make them more American. And then I added beards. And then Ben sort of went, "Oh, I'll have a couple of those," because they were crazy. And because the beards weren't just tiny little suggestions of beards. I actually made full, Dan sort of bit. and mad, with a beard, ZZ Top beards on them.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
then yeah, and then we had a lovely conversation, and we sort of said, "Look, I'm doing that," and then Ben started to do his crazy photographs, and then it sort of went, "Ian, can we do some more?" And I went, and that's when I broke my rules. And I went and actually ordered off Model U myself. And Ben and I chatted, and he said, "I'd like these." And I got this list of, "Can you have this? Can you get this for me and get that for me?" And because I'd already built up a relationship with Alan Butler, who Ben has actually met, which I haven't even met.
Alan, he owns Model U in Bristol in the United Kingdom. And my wife and I were on a vacation trip, and I'm like, "Oh my God, we're going past Bristol. We gotta go." I'm not kidding. I rang the doorbell, because it had it's like an office, right? And Alan had no idea we were coming. And I'm just like, "Hi, my name's Ben. I'm from Atlanta. I buy your stuff. I love it. Can I come in?" So he spent a couple of hours just showing me around. It was great. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, it was fun.
No, this is what this is about, because Ben and I started to talk and that sort of thing. And then last year, I was so hoping to get and meet the infamous Al and
yes,
all you guys, Ben and that sort of thing. And I was also going to visit Gary and
Gary Beatty.
Gary Beatty. Sorry, I was going to drop in, and we had it all organized. I'd even done some figures that we were going to sell as charity things. I'd actually made them myself off a Dave Meek photograph. Dave had printed out postcards. We were going to do this, raise some money for Teen Challenge. That was the one that Gary chose. And then, of course, there was an issue. Nothing could be done about it. And I'd actually, just before that had pulled out, I said, "Look, I can't make it. My mum's had several falls. We can't afford it at the moment. I'm backwards and forwards to my mum's." And that was when I had to cancel it. And I missed out on the June meet and all that sort of thing. And I would have been there and met you guys. I don't know whether you would have wanted to meet me. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have a wicked sense of humor too. I think that's where Ben and I love fun, but that's because I cause Paul, as you call them, River Canna. Sorry, guys, but I really bend the curve there, because I not only don't rivet count, if I do rivet count, the rivets are 3 times bigger, and I deliberately do them that way because it's 5 points. There's 5.5 rivets there when, you know, it's my go at them. And then I go and build a layout that has 300 teddy bears. So catch up, Larry. Come on, catch up. You know.
Yeah, I know. I need
gotta find them all.
teddy bears or dogs or something.
Yeah.
Mate, yeah, I'm up to 1,000 now. I'm up to 1,000 on the layout, and I would have 1,100, except for certain gentlemen who were named nameless, Ben and Dan, Dan Roslow in Texas. Dan cleaned me out of my last 19 figures that I spent so much, because you saw those little ladies with the dresses with flowers that I've actually painted on the dresses, and of course this is an inch high, well, 3/4 high skirt that I put tiny little, 18 flowers on.
I think we have some photos of your so maybe we ought to, Dylan, if we could show some photos.
If you wouldn't mind, Dylan.
Okay.
This is how I got introduced. A gentleman called Ian Femster. These are Ian's work, right? Not a problem. This is what I love about figure painting. He posted that up, and I said, Ian, do you know somebody? I know somebody who could do better than that, because that's what people are producing as figures, right? And I'm not criticizing. They look okay on the layout.
They look pretty good. All right. To the average person, they look really good. So now go ahead. Now go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to a next figure. Dylan, if you wouldn't mind. Okay. Oh, okay. That was the figures. This is my craziness. This is a little loco that sits on my layout. Now, this is very special to me. This bridge is actually a real bridge. It existed till last year. It got washed finally, after almost 100 years, got washed away because they didn't look after it. It's a lift bridge over the Marucci River, just 80 kilometers north of me. But I couldn't do it standard. I put a 1/48 scale Italian Macchi seaplane in there. There's a little boat and a little wharf.
Yep.
The little diesel loco, which has full sounds. My friend, I'm not good putting chips in. I'm hopeless. I break every chip that I ever put into a loco. I had a friend put it in for me. That has full sound. So it has the correct noise of this actual loco, which is actually Petrie, and it was built by my dad. So I took that and I converted, how do I put it? My painting is better than my father's. I was a lot neater, and I repainted it. And this is named after my grandson. In the background, you'll see.
Yeah.
I love my grandboy. He loves my layout. He was actually over on Wednesday, and he actually loved. I have to take him down. He's 6, and I have to take him down and show the layout. In the background, you'll see all sorts of buildings and craziness. And mate, there's stories. Ben has actually been corrupting me to tell more stories. I love putting figures.
Yeah,
I'm really a lot more aware of. I don't name them like you do, Ben. Sorry, mate.
Okay.
I cannot. I had a brother who was the master punter. He would have matched you. My little brother would have matched you and topped you. He had this mind that was. I'm an artist. I'm verbally no good. My English was never great. I could never tell stories. Let's go to the next photo. Dylan. Okay, this is me starting to storytell. This is a beautiful model done by Outback Models. Unfortunately, I heard the story why they closed, and I don't want to go there. Beautiful models by Outback Models by John Hunter and Laurie Green. They are just magnificent. But in that photos are, of course, Ian couldn't help himself, but he had to put Australian cars. That's Australian. Those 3 cars, there's one peeking out, and there's 2. There's a ute and a van. They're Holdens. And we have a thing called utes. You don't call your pickup trucks. We call them utes because they're actually paneled as part of the vehicle. They're not separate bodies. They're actually, the body is part of the vehicles. As they say, move the pigs on the week and go to church on Sunday. But if you look very closely, there's like the sign is red bear fuel, because all my fuel is red bear, a theme by the teddy bears. In the behind is two hot rods who are about to take off, and in the middle is a girl about to drop the hanky. Because it just again, and I think that's why people like Al, myself, Larry, and Ben, we get each other. We get the sense of humor. It's not. I build models differently than Al, and Al builds models differently than Larry, and then Ben comes in and does what he does. None of it distracts from each other. None of us are going, oh, I build better than you. You're not. Oh, look, I can see that down that bottom left-hand side. You know, if you're doing a rack of tires, they should be this. No, it's like, oh, love it, brilliant. You know,
yeah.
And as Al, every day, I look forward to an Al photograph off his layout. It's just what we look forward to. You know, I model some of my stuff off what Al does and what Larry does. Larry doesn't know how close I came to actually building a World War I, because my other interest is I'm an absolute rabid wargamer. I took up wargaming because that wasn't, model trades was not my hobby. It's not my first hobby. It was wargaming because I used to paint models and I could never do anything with them. Yeah. And I would paint my figures and then make little dioramas, but I put them on the shelf and that was it. Whereas wargaming, now I'm now up to 30,000 figures that I painted, either wargaming or, now most of those are wargaming figures.
Wow, that's a lot.
Crazy.
It's a lot of figures, and hence why while I've been sitting here, I've painted 5 figures while I've been sitting here.
Mr. Multitask.
Yeah.
The Aussie.
Oh yeah, I do. So next photo, please, Dylan.
Look at that.
Okay, this is now, see, through this, I've shared these with you guys, and some of you guys are seeing. This is my other hobby. I'm also, I won't say an award winner because I've met the guys who are the best of the best. I've been to international shows, and man, these guys they're magical. You know, we sit there and we spend hours just painting eyes, you know, just to have the right twinkle and that sort of thing. But this is me pushing myself. I do the larger figures to push my skill level higher, so that when I translate it back down to the more natural, sometimes I have to let the vivid colors come out, so that when I come back, I can control them more in the smaller scales. Next figure, please, Dylan. Is that it? Yeah. See, now I'm actually, this is photography gone nuts. You know, we were talking, Ben, about photography. This is just taken with a camera, but that's using my filters and all that sort of thing to really enhance the fact that there's light. It's dark, it's night, and he's just come out with a lantern and there's something about to attack him. That's a little diorama. That figure is only 30 millimeters tall. So, you know, this is, and I scratch built this whole base. That the figure in the front's a rat called a skaven. I actually scratch built that. The dwarf is from a guy in Italy. See, this is what happens when you mix and you start doing things. You meet and talk to other people. I just bought these set of figures off this guy. We get along. We talk to each other, and I talk to him, and he shows me photos of his little 2-year-old girl and all this sort of thing. And our hobbies bring us friendship, And that's how I you know, Ben and I, it's not just he buys figures off me. We talk to each other. We share things. He shares things, and I make comments on his on his models, and then we start playing word playing, and then there's, you know, the ones who post on your photos, Ben. It starts to get quite libelous and rude, and we just poor Al. I don't know how he allows us to get away with what we get away with on your wonderful site, Al.
That's right.
Next part.
Free reign from the administrator is what that is.
Oh, they get reported. I just ignore the reports.
Yeah, anything I put on, I can imagine Al going, "Oh, Ian said something again."
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I try not to post anything bad on your site, Al.
And here's me going absolutely crazy. This is my modeling. This is a tail end Tuesday. Yeah, Al and all you guys have all started me doing this. This is one of my little trains. This is because I model Queensland. I'm a Queenslander. I lived here. I've grown here all my life. We have narrow gauge, like Americans don't have narrow gauge. Australians and Queenslanders have narrow gauge. Like we have thousands of miles of 2-foot narrow gauge, and then we had what we call tramways, went all throughout Queensland. So this is, I pick bits and pieces from all over the tramways, but then I go, we can't have cane trains. We'll have rum trains.
That's right.
So yeah, and it's like, of course, in Queensland, we have one of the biggest rum distilleries in the Southern Hemisphere called Bundaberg Rum. I don't know whether any of you have actually drunk any of this stuff. It's black poison.
Wait, Thunderbird? Thunderbird rum?
Bundaberg. Bundaberg is a town north of me. It's called Bundaberg Rum. It uses a polar bear as its symbol.
All right. We'll have to look that up. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
never seen it here.
Ben, first one to find it wins.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you're going to drink, don't buy the standard. Get the red. Red Bundaberg rum is it's really nice, and that I will drink. I will drink that. But you can set. We've got a classic Queensland pub. 4X is actually our local beer. 3X is my joke on it because it's more proof. I've got a little guards van that actually existed, and it actually existed till ended up as a chook pen in a suburb of Brisbane. My father and a friend found that actual guards van. Sorry, they're not cabooses in Australia, they're guards vans. And yeah, so I've even got those railway bunks they actually flash, and that was something I did. So, you know, this is my craziness. There's all sorts of things going on. There's actually in behind that wagons, they're not human, they're orcs. You know, I had to slip some fantasy figures into my layout. So yeah, there's actually orcs standing there, and there's a nurse about to fix things up. Yeah,
that's what you look like if you drank too much of the rum.
Yeah. I'm looking for teddy bears.
That's if you drink. That's if you drink bourbon. That's what, you know. If you drink bourbon, that ruins you. You know, us Australians don't drink that poison. We drink proper Scotch whiskey. Sorry, guys, but you know.
Oh,
that's
I'm looking for the teddy bears. I can't see it.
Okay, I think that's all of the photos, isn't it, Dylan?
Oh,
is that it?
No.
Oh, these. I think these are yours, Ben. I think these
they are.
These actually. I got Dr. Tom the other day. He's called his sauerkraut bags. If he actually read the bags, they actually say Fanai grains. I've actually, because you know how I'm known as Fanai, Fanai.
Yeah.
No one knows why, but the actual story behind Fanai is when I used to write poems, and you had to have a nom de plume to enter competitions. So I invented a nom de plume. FA is Fangies, and Nye is Ian spelt backwards.
Clever.
So I started then to do. Now we talked before the show that I'm actually a painter. I'm an artist. I actually paint landscapes, and I started to try to sign Ian Fangies on my paintings. My earliest paintings are actually signed Ian Fangies, and it just got too hard to do the whole name, so I just shortened it to Fanai, and it's just quick and bang. It's every painting, every figure I do has a little Fanai signature on it. So that's. But these were done for Ben's. I think they've all been named, I believe.
Yeah,
Ben, especially
they do have names. And of course, we have on the layout, we have the old Swill distillery, and guys toting grain sacks is perfect for, what are you going to do with grain? Well, we're going to make swill out of that. So that's what these guys are doing on the layout for sure. Yep.
And the beauty about these is these are the Model U figures. I don't know how he does it, but those figures look like they're carrying weight.
Yeah,
They do.
They do. This is 3D printing. We were talking about this last week. The ability to capture weight and fall and stance, like the guy sleeping. How many of us have walked into work and watched one of our mates asleep somewhere in a corner?
Yeah.
Then I add my colors, and I don't know. It's just the match of the 3D printing and this. I think that's about me.
And
Right on.
That's all.
And the lettering on the bags is all hand done, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's all comes from doing wargaming. I used to paint shields on knights and that sort of thing, and you had to paint all the herald was that word. Heraldry.
Do we have any more photos? There we go.
This is libelous. This is me. This is 3D printing. This is what's coming next. Because Ben shared one of the photos of the mid Hudson crew, and also Larry. I think you shared. Dan, we're getting 3D scanned, and there's 3D prints of us getting around, and that's a group of guys. I think you ended up with those, didn't you, Ben? Or
I've got them. Yep.
Yeah, I thought they were you. Again, I got as a gift. I got a 3D scan done by Andean, and now I always keep in my stock. I have a small stock from Andean, and I keep always about 10 of these, and I occasionally, some I sell, occasionally I give. I gave one to one of my Australian guys. He was just doing it tough. He was having a bad week, and I painted one up and I sent it in the mail as a gift. This is what you can do.
Ian, you're brave, because I've been asked to be 3D scanned, but I figure the retribution would be so severe.
Oh my God.
There's no way I'm doing it.
Oh, we'll just hold you down. We'll knock you out and make you a sleeper. It's all right. We'll make it.
Ex-hockey player.
That's right.
Mate, ex-rugby league player. We're
I
tougher
played
than
that
you.
too.
You wear armor. We
I was
play
a
without
prop.
armor, mate.
I was a prop.
You have more pictures, Dylan? Okay.
Oh, I love that. Look at that.
This is me being absolutely a show off. Sorry. This is probably one of my favorite parts. This is on my home layout. This is Conondale. Not Conondale, sorry. Craigmount Tramway, which is based in the hinterland above me, just north of me, 80 kilometers north of me. And the one of the main lines I spoke about it, Budrum Tramways, had a big cutting and a little halt called Mons, and I've modelled it all. So I've built the cutting. Then on top of it, I thought, I've got to have a guest house, because all of these places had guest houses. So then I built that, but that's in HO. So I got more distant. Then I started building a story. Now, if you look very closely, there's a whole group of people around a bus, and there's a combi van blocking everybody, because what's happening is the owner of the guest house has come down because he's got the Queensland Tourist Board's about to come up and look at his guest house. And unfortunately, the council's decided this is the day they're going to grade the road. So further down the road is a grader sitting there. The two blokes have got the parked council ute and the grader, and they're having an argument saying, no, I've got to get these guys up here from the tourist board, because they're Queensland government. They're not going to wait around. And then I added the three-dimensional, I love scenery. But if you look very closely behind the combi is a three-dimensional backdrop scene that I've actually got a road disappearing, and that's where I've used my artistic skills.
Well,
and then I look at this and I go, I almost tear up, because in the foreground is the windmill my father scratch built. Well, I built my first scratch built loco in plasticard, which was a diesel. Dad built that, a brass loco, and a brass three-legged crane, all at the same time. So I took to build this one. He was scratch building while I was, So that this part of the layout, I call it my dad's area, because all the way from house through to this. But Ben, this is you. You're telling stories.
Yep. It's great when scenes can tell a story, and sometimes you make up the scene to try to create the story that you're trying to achieve, right? I love to do that. Same with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, let me ask you this. Where, and some of you have mentioned it in passing so far. Talk to me about 3D printing. Where is that going to take our hobby, say, in the next 5 years?
Oh, how about I start and then we can loop around. So remember, I'm in the technology business. So we're all about AI and chat GBT and things like that. So everybody's trying to push the edge, push the envelope. So to me, 3D printing, it's been around quite a while now, but what it's done is essentially, it's going to be an interesting word. It's democratizing the process to bring new products to market, if I could say it that way. And really what I mean is anybody can buy a 3D printer and make stuff. You can make it for yourself. You can make it for a small batch market. You can make it so that you're selling tens of thousands of things. If you find a reason or an area where it's not being addressed currently, you can go and you can make a good living. You could literally survive doing that and have a business. So the thing I look at is, especially with detail parts, it's, cast metal, white metal. I mean, it's those manufacturers are becoming fewer and fewer because frankly, people they're retiring or they're passing away, and they're not, the families don't want to continue the business. We see that happen all too often, but 3D printing has now made a resurgence. And so now you can, and the thing with the figures, like Ian just showed, Ian's painting these incredibly detailed 3D printed figures. It's astonishing to me. And you can, once you have a digital a file, you can make it in any scale you want. You can make it any size you want. You make the same figure in Z scale, N scale, all the way up to G and or however big, it's just however long you want to let the thing sit in the printer and how big a model your printer can actually make, right? So that's kind of my view on it. Again, I look at it as it's a resurgence of our, I don't want to necessarily say industry, but our hobby is going to have a resurgence, I think, because of 3D printing. But Larry, you just got a 3D printer, so maybe you have a more nuanced thought about this.
Sure. I've been having a bunch of friends design and 3D print stuff for me because what I try to model is not available at all out there. And we'll show some pictures in a second, but I want to build an entire destroyed town for my World War I layout. And I asked a friend of mine to do it, and he said it was going to take him like 200 hours of printing and all this stuff. And I said, no, I'm not going to ask you to let this thing run for 200 hours. I'm going to buy my own stuff. I'll do it. I'll learn it. I've been using the software to design stuff. And so I'll just do it on my own. But Dylan, you want to bring up some pictures? So to give you some idea about scaling, this is one figure basically resized multiple times. So if you're humans or you look at any pictures of somebody in a group, there's people of different sizes, different heights, different weights. So with 3D printing, you take one single file and you can make them taller, shorter, thinner, fatter, whatever you want to do with them. You can take them, you can move their legs around, you can move their arms around. You could add different pieces to them, but this is just one quick one I did of a bunch of soldiers I needed. And actually their backs were going to be to the scene. So it really didn't matter that their faces were the same, but I could produce multiples and it looked very accurate based on the different sizes.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not against Calibro printing. I'm going to send him about 300 figures after this and see what he does with them, but let's go to the next picture.
That'll keep me busy for about 2 days.
Okay, I'll send you 1,000. So one of the things with my layout is there's no way I was going to scratch build artillery shells. I could do it. If I was going to do 5 or 10, I could do it, but I needed like 10,000 for the layout. So we 3D printed thousands and thousands of artillery shells that are all over the place in the layout. Now, unfortunately, I haven't figured out a way to 3D paint them.
That's the next trick.
That would be a wonderful trick because it'd be a lot easier than grabbing a toothpick and trying to paint lines based on what the shell type is. But anyway, we can move to the next picture. And this is just what the 3D shells look like coming out. I think there's 120 shells on a rack and they break off very easily. This is actually based on a FDM printer. There's another, the printer I bought will be a lot cleaner print on them. It's a 12K printer. So, but again, I go usually by the 3-foot rule when I model. If you're getting closer than 3 feet away from my model, I'm going to smack you on the back of the head.
Larry, is that a resin printer?
That is actually FDM, so it's
okay.
It's not resin. They heat up the material before it goes through the sprayer, and it sprays on. The one I bought is a resin printer, and that's what the figures are printed on in the previous picture.
Okay.
Or 2 pictures ago.
Next.
Yeah, I think it's resin is electrically charged, and that's what makes it each layer produce.
Yeah, they both go on layers, but the resin ones are much finer caliber. I don't know if that's the way to say it. Much thinner layers. But you can see here, a friend of mine designed these duck boards. There's about 300 in this load on the wagon. And there's no way I was going to scratch build 300 of these suckers out of chopping wood up and gluing them together. So I have 2 wagons full of these and about another 300-400 on the layout. So just very easy to mass produce them. I actually did go out to several manufacturers to see if they would actually do this for me, and the volume I needed was too small for them. So friends just jumped in and helped me.
Yep.
To go a bit further, another friend, Bob, printed these for me. We found what they're called STL files. We found them online, and it's multi-part print. The wheels are all separate, the hood, the bonnet in English, the back, but they make really good models. The 3D STL file was not complete. It didn't have all the details, so I did have to like kind of go back and kit bash stuff and shape brass and do stuff to add to it, but really does show you that you can make multiples of the stuff, and it's just amazing. Like, I couldn't have got this vehicle any other way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Those are gorgeous, Larry. Nice.
Are those marker lights off of a Bachmann Mogul?
No, they're
No?
3D printed.
They were actually printed on there. Yeah, they look
No,
just
they're
like
separate pieces. So
yeah.
we printed a whole bunch of pieces, like the fenders, the bonnet, the lights, the headlights. They're all separate pieces. They fit onto it.
Yeah.
Now 3D printing the resin is very
Cool.
delicate. You have to be very careful with it, but they produce excellent results.
What kind of glue do you use, Gary, Larry, to put them together?
ACC, Gorilla, ACC. I'm sure there's other stuff that's better, but that's easy for me to get here.
Yeah.
Maybe one of those with the a solid paint color needs to find its way to Soggy Bottom.
Just bring the cash. Bring the bag of cash, Ben.
I know. Right.
Ben does visit my house and tries to copy
Yes.
everything I have.
I only show up because of the drinks, right?
Yeah.
The beach and the drinks.
Yeah.
You guys never show up at my place.
Well,
I
it's
don't
that would be the 24-hour time to,
Yeah. Just be careful what you wish for, Ian.
I have a guest room.
We'll work it out.
Next, Dylan. Oh, that's it.
So yeah,
All right.
I think 3D printing is definitely going to help the hobby. It'll bring some younger folks into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, because I keep hearing about this AI. Is AI going to get involved with 3D printing?
I guess there's potential. I'm in pseudo IT as well.
Pseudo.
Don't laugh.
I know I'm going to use that against you now. No.
I think that eventually there might be a way to do it, but AI is basically you talking to the computer and getting it to figure stuff out. I think 3D printing, you're going to need to have a scanner that can scan some artifact. And I don't think that AI is going to be able to do that. Now, maybe at some point, if you had enough pictures of something from different angles, AI might be able to reassemble it into a 3D image. I just don't think that's like 2 years away, 3 years away.
But see, that's not very far, right? So here's the way I think maybe, Jim, and I'm going to combine, Larry, what you just said with Jim, what you asked is Larry's looking for really, really specific World War I, mostly Canadian based military applications, right? He's looking for things that are going to be really drilled down. Can we find a single photo of something that would represent what he's trying to find? And that, I think, is where AI may help, because when we're going and we do a normal Google search, I'm looking for whatever, and Larry's doing that for his World War I stuff. Google's doing its algorithms behind the scenes to try to come up with things that it thinks Larry's asking for. But over time, Larry will have his own personal AI that will then be able to go out and say, wait a minute, I'm now seeing the last 52 things you looked for, and I'm going to say, I think you want this one. And that's an AI application. And you know what? It might be right. It might not, right? But over time, it's going to get better and better to help Larry find what he's trying to look for with regard to that specific World War I village, that he wants to show bombed out or destroyed or something like that. And then it's to find that the STL files that might represent buildings from a village like that. And they may be from somebody in Bulgaria.
Mhm.
Well, the AI we're using would actually write the code to create the STL file. So, that's a little further away, but
Yeah. Right.
one day,
And
maybe.
then add the color.
Again, you got to have enough pictures of the different sides of the thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at least that's not going to be next month.
No, maybe.
Oh, no.
Well, but when a museum comes to me with one black and white photograph of a building and says we need this built, I have to imagine what would make sense on the other three sides.
Yes.
Where would the bathroom be? Where would the back door be? Stuff, and you make it up. Nobody really knows. And I think AI will be able to do that. I think it will be able to imagine what you can't see and fill it in logically.
That's a great point. So think about in the narrow gauge short line Gazette, Bob Brown's thing.
Yep.
Bodie, is it Bodie, Nevada, California? All right. Every issue you have a building, right, that's represented in the photos and then the modeling and the diagrams and the graphs and all that. AI would have all of that, or it's all available digitally. And so AI would have access to that. So it can literally say, when you, Al, are trying to do a building and it's a photo of the front, it'll say, oh, I've seen buildings that look like that in the front, and this is what all of the backs and the sides look like. It may not be that specific building, but it'll be ones just like it.
Similar to, right.
Present it to you and you say, there you go.
When I do it, I have to use 50 years experience to figure it out.
Which today is better than AI.
Yeah.
It's not able to do what I do yet.
Right.
Yeah, but there's, Al, we'll be buying off AI soon. I'm just kidding.
I need to retire at some point. So
the big thing though too with this is color. It will, because of the color these days, it'll be able to add color from other things that are still existing and go, oh yeah, okay, this is, because I'm in the color world, that's what I do, and I can see, I'm seeing 3D printing now, printing figures. There's a guy in Australia who prints 3D color now. He's doing cars, N-scale cars. He hasn't got to HO because it just doesn't work yet, but he's really pushing the envelope.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you think about the movie "Thou Shalt Not Grow Old," right? And how they colorize that. And if they can take the same black and white pictures and make models and print them the same color, the right color.
So I did want to mention, Jim, kind of to wrap up the 3D printing thing. When we had talked earlier, I think we came up with essentially 3 areas of 3D printing. You have personal use, which Larry is doing. You have community use, which Larry was doing, and which is kind of what we experience in our little ecosystem. And you have professional manufacturing, which is, GE starting to make 3D printed aircraft engines and stuff, right? That's the big thing. And there may be others, but it seems like those 3 are what's starting to take hold or have already taken hold in the 3D printing world.
And I really hear more about it in ON30 than I do the other scales, and I don't know why that is yet.
Because we're freelance freaks, man.
Yeah, that may be true. I don't know, but I do hear more about it. It seems like from ON30 modelers.
The creativity in ON30 is probably higher than in any other scale.
That may be part of it too.
Because we started out hand making everything, and so a lot of unique ideas come from that.
And you know what? So Les Davis, he's part of the Mid Hudson group, and he 3D prints every day, all day. And he's got, he does scans of all of us. So every one of us has a little figure of ourselves. You literally can say to Les, right? You can say to Les, I want to, like Al or Alan Littlefield would say to him, I want to do a particular 060 locomotive, and I need to have this kind of I don't know, cab, and Les will go 3D print that cab, that thing for that one particular thing, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's a literally it's a one.
Well, yeah, one off. I mean, you can't beat it for one off.
Right.
You know, nobody's going to make a $20,000 injection mold to make you a cab.
No.
You know?
Right. A one-off
unless you
cab.
want to pay, $50,000 for the cab.
Yeah.
How badly do you want that? Right.
Yeah. So that's where it's great. I mean, if you need a unique stack or anything like that, you know, somebody can crank it out for you for a couple of bucks. And most times it's not the cost of printing it, it's the time it takes to design it.
Yep. And Dylan, who's running the show, has done several pieces for me.
Yep.
Right. That's right. Dylan Lambert, another.
Well, Les Davis there, Sam Panisi just recently needed track bumpers, and he wanted a particular type that weren't available. So he went to Les. Les made them up, and they were so popular. Les now makes them and sells them because of Sam needing a couple. You know.
Yeah.
I think I might have 6 of those. Yes.
Yeah. And actually, to loop it all back, Les and I and Newell Sage were interested in World War I stuff, and Les 3D printed all the stuff to show Bachman to make the trench locomotive.
Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he presented it to them. So he designed it on, printed it, and said, "Here it is." Right.
Well, you know, we've also heard all of you talk about Facebook and the post on Facebook and how people are using Facebook now. But a lot of people still, you know, they don't go to Facebook. So Ben, I know that you posted stuff on Facebook, but for those people that aren't familiar really with what you do and so forth, why don't we take a look at some more of your modeling?
Sure.
So Dylan, I'll turn it over to you. I know we've got quite a few here. So Dylan, we need to kind of push through them a little bit.
All right. This one I can actually give you the story. So if you look at the scene, you got a weathered building, you got a little critter locomotive. By the way, Dave Wingrove made that. Scratch built that little locomotive. And I made it into a diorama. And Art Fahey owns Bar Mills, right? And they participate in Al Judy's meets. And so this building is called Fahey's Wagon and Wheel Repair Shop. So I'm going to read you the story that I crafted to go with this scene. It's Front End Friday in Soggy Bottom, and today we are at Fahey's Wagon and Wheel Repair Shop, where we catch one of the critters stopped for a lunch break. The critter obviously being the locomotive. Loco driver Russ T. Nail likes the pulled pork sandwiches available at Wagner's Market down the street from Fahey's, and he really likes the girl behind the counter, Molly Cool, Kuhl. So again, you read Molly Cool, but it sounds like molecule. So a lunch stop was in order. This stuff makes me laugh. So seated on the left, we have Harry Cox with his pipe. And so a sidebar, when I was in college, I thought it was really cool to try to smoke a pipe and have a tweed jacket, right? Right. And so I did. And it was Borkum Riff was the pipe tobacco. So Harry Cox with his pipe, and it's Borkum Riff, don't you know? And he's chatting with Papa Woody about cybersecurity using multi-factor authentication. Ha! No, they're not. That hadn't been invented yet in 1946. So there's a little joke inside a joke, right? They're talking about their favorite whiskey brands, and seated behind them is Jack Schitt, Schitt. Remember, it's got to be written. And Jack is munching on a steak and Gouda on Rye Hero that he picked up at Wagner's. By the way, a few moments earlier, Harry asked Papa if he knew Jack, to which Harry responded, "I don't know shit." Sorry, Schitt, right? So for the YouTube police. And then Raynor Schein, a German name, Schein. He has his hands in his pockets. He's catching up with Russ about the corn growing season and how much revenue the railroad might make from the grain shipments this summer. And over on the right, with a very relaxed pose, is Russell Sprout, wondering to himself, what's that little dangly bit below the front coupler on the locomotive? Inquiring minds want to know. Ah, yes, the mental gymnastics that happen in the minds of men in Soggy Bottom. So that's the story for that particular picture. And then at the bottom, I want to say Larry Burke, he built the building. The figures are from Model U that we've talked about, and Ian Fages painted them. And there you go. That's the story that represents that photo.
Fantastic.
Right
How
on.
about that?
Right on. So I don't want to have to tell you the story for every one of these, but the Soggy Bottom layout, again, like Larry mentioned, he was interested and he was going to get rid of his modules. So I was lucky enough to be able to buy those from him. The Soggy Bottom layout is an award-winning, at one of the narrow gauge shows, layout, and it's modular. What do we got? It's right behind me over here, or right next to me. It's 8 feet by 6 feet by 8 by, so it's pretty good size, modular. It's a dead rail layout, and the guys, the Soggy Bottom boys, they call themselves, that put it together years ago. Several of them had passed away in 2019 and 2020, and the remaining guys wanted to basically we're done with it, so they wanted to sell it. And so I saw it on one of the Facebook posts, saying Bob Lintelman in Columbus, Ohio, was the one who had the layout, and he was responsible for selling it. So I was like, oh my God, now I can have a huge layout. I have Al's layout, the 4x4, and I have Larry's modules that I had already built a lot of stuff, more modules, but now I have an award-winning layout available. All I got to do is get to Columbus, Ohio. And I've already told you now, I went to Chicago for the HON3 one, brought that home. And then I went to Harrisburg and brought Al's home. And then I went to Charlotte and brought, Larry's home. So now I was like, well, Columbus, Ohio, let's go do that. So that's where this layout came from. A team of people built it, the Soggy Boys. And so what I like to do is I add things to it. So you see the river boats in front. The one on the left, Aaron Loyette built. It's a Deerfield River laser kit that Ed Fillin put together. The one on the right, I think it's from Mark Schreier, Foggy Mountain Models. I believe that's one of his. And then you see all those figures, right? Ian painted those figures, and there's a little story to go with it. And frankly, I can't remember the story off the top of my head. But it would be funny because they all have goofy names. And they're all busy doing stuff on the layout. There's a canal. They're in a canal right there. And so I'm just where I'm sitting right now is my home office, right? So I work here and I have a layout right there, and I get to play with trains anytime I want all day long, even when I'm on calls for work. Don't tell my boss, right? Yeah. So let's go to the next one.
I'm sending them the YouTube video.
That's right. Oh, so the yellow building I bought for $10 at one of the meats in Gardner, right? The Mid-Hudson meats. And again, I got the figures, and there you see the Mid-Hudson meat, the little field, right? That's the one that Newell Sage made. And you got the tail end of a pickup truck right there. And so on the layout, all I'm doing here is I'm putting a scene together. And, if I'm remembering correctly, the guy who's wiping the window with the red handkerchief he's wiping off dog snot that got stuck to the window. Because I had a little story about a dog who was Drulius Caesar, right? The name of the dog. The guy's eating a tuna fish sandwich because he's been sniffing paint fumes all day and he's about ready to tip over. So, and the guy who's leaning back with the pipe, that's Pierre Pants. He's talking to whoever's in the cab of the pickup truck. So it's just a scene. It's a moment captured in time on the layout. And I didn't make the buildings, but the buildings are gorgeous. Look at all the trash and the junk and everything. I mean, it cost me $10. How could I not buy that and put it in? So, all right, next one. Okay, so I did make this module. And here, what I was trying to do, there's almost a joke going on, like all the action on the soggy bottom is people, the workers are loafing. They don't do any work. They're just standing around or laying around. I got some of them falling asleep, you know. They're talking, like the three guys on the left are talking. And then the guy, but this scene though, he's actually driving the little critter. He's trying to get something done. And if you look at him, it looks like he's trying to start it and it's not starting. That's sort of what it looks like, but maybe he's actually driving. But then rain or shine there, the guy with his back to us is probably going to get run over. So we know it's not driving across the scene. So it's probably our loco driver there is probably trying to start this thing and get it cranked up and off we go. By the way, the backdrops make a big difference, I think, in the scenes. And I got this one from Al. And I've learned from Al that backdrops make the scene. So I have a lot of different ones. Some of them are like the Rocky Mountains with snow-capped peaks and things like that. Some of them are this more Pennsylvania rolling hills. Some of them are fall, you know, where you have a lot of color in the background. You can pull these things right off the internet and print them yourself, you know, and then you put them on. I put them on a gator board or something like that so that they're stiff. But you need something behind everything so that it's not just a blank wall. Like, you know, I got a blank wall up here. That would be kind of boring, right? So that's important for anybody who wants to take photos of their models. Please put in something in the background to make it interesting. I think that's something I learned along the way, right? From all these great modelers. All right, what's next?
Like Netflix and Spotify, bro. Look at this thing.
Here we are. So this is the upper layer of that 4x4 micro layout that Al built, and Ian painted these three guys, and they got. I love these flannel jackets. I mean, the detail to be able to do the cross, you know, the pattern of the flannel, and they all got their locomotive caps on, and they all got their overalls. And they're having a conversation. Frankly, I don't remember which one this is. I could make it up as we go. But what I love to do, this would have been probably a front end Friday because we got a beautiful locomotive. And that looks like maybe one that Dave Wingrove built. Yep. These three guys are having a chat about something. And one of them looks like he's trying to lord the guy on the left, maybe is the boss dude, and he's talking to the other two, and they're not all that appreciative of whatever he's saying. And you could tell by the look on their face, like, oh, we have to tolerate this for a few minutes, and then we're just going to go do whatever we do. And so I try to bring in human nature, you know, basically we have to do what the boss says. We don't always agree with it. We probably don't like his attitude. We just tolerate it until he's done, and then we'll go do whatever we do anyway. You know, human nature, I bring that into my scenes. And what I really like about him is I also want to have, if you see in the background, again, Al built this layout with that's a little street, you know, gravel street in the middle of this tiny town. And there's a pickup in the back there with the hood is up, right? And it's at a service station and they're working on it. But and it's kind of blurry, but that's in the background. And so it's part of the scene, but it's sort of not, right? Obviously the focus is on the three guys. It's on the front of the locomotive. But in the background, there's still things that are interesting that fill the back of the scene. They're not intruding, but they point out that there's stuff going on in this tiny little village, right? So I try to do that in the scenes as well. Next up.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Oh, that's again same. It's the micro layout that Al built. And so what I did with these is this is the figure on the right, the one guy I have with modern technology, and he's got a walkie-talkie. And the reason I wanted to have him was I made a reference to the New York Central locomotive run at Batavia, New York, that got over 100 miles an hour at like 1889. If you guys think about your history, probably recall that. And so Benny Factor, the loco driver on the left, decided he wanted to light up this locomotive to get to 100 miles an hour. And it basically, while not exploding the boiler, caused a bit of a problem. The locomotive had to stop. And the guy on the right, whose name escapes me, but it's going to be one of those here. I'll give you a name right now. Justin Case. He had stuff to do tonight, right? He was going to meet with his wife. They're going to have dinner. And now all of a sudden he's out in the middle of nowhere and the locomotive doesn't run anymore. And Benny Factor is sitting there, getting ready to play pocket pool and cause this issue. And Justin's not going to get home in time. And so that's kind of the story that goes with this scene. And again, you can see the backdrop right behind it. That makes the scene look real because right, it's not a blank wall in the back. So the backdrops are very important. And of course, the detail that Al puts in, you look at the gravel and you look at the roadbed and the rails, and it's just, man, love it. All right, next. All right, Al, this is another Al locomotive. And again, I put together this tiny little module. I call it the yard, and this is on the High Line in the Soggy Bottom layout. And it's got trash barrels and it's got a lot of other junk. You can't see all the junk in this photo, but really all I wanted to do was highlight this locomotive that Al had weathered and detailed. And then it has a backdrop behind it, right? You can see the tiny little rail on the left that's in front of the coupler of the locomotive. That's the end. That's the end of this particular module. And behind that is just a photo. And so if I'm thinking correctly, I'll try to match the backdrop photo with whatever is in the forefront, the same kind of green, that kind of thing. Once in a while I miss it. I might have like a desert front and a really lush Pennsylvania background. But if you do it well, it looks really nice. And this is a nice composition. And it's all about the locomotive that Al put together. So, all right. Next.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah. Here we go. So Sam Barbo's he scratch built this locomotive. And again, in the figure, the loco driver, that's one of the figures that Ian, look at that beard, right? Ian made that beard. This is just a guy. This is an Andean model, right, Ian?
Yeah.
And then the beard. Yeah. And he's just having a chat with, I think that's, I can't remember the name of this guy. Kenny Do It, maybe Kenny Do It, is the guy with the plaid jacket down below. And again, all we're doing here is we're having just a conversation. This might be one of the front end Friday representations. I got a backdrop. You can see it's very clear here where the module stops and where the backdrop starts, but it almost doesn't matter. It looks like it might be a little bit of a cliff. We're on the High Line, right? But the fact that there is a backdrop means the scene is kind of complete, right? You got the cutoff stump and stuff like that. Yeah. So go ahead. Next one, Ian. Or Ian. Dylan, thank you. All right. So here again, this is my end of the yard. We have a repair yard, and then you can see where the backdrop is. And we've got the figures, the guy leaning over, he's wearing the hat. He looks a little bit like a Nazi, probably acts like a Nazi. He's telling these guys what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and why they need to do it so fast. And meanwhile, they're just trying to get this wheel bearing lubricated. And the guy driving the locomotive is getting ready to come out with a big ass screwdriver because, he's going to help. And then, of course, the guy up in front of the locomotive, I'm not sure exactly what he's doing. He's using his rag to clean something. Maybe there's grease on something. But it was a scene, and it had a little story, and it was all about the human interactions and the fact that the four guys can't stand the guy leaning over him, yelling at him, right? Yeah. And we've all been there. We've all received that from somebody in our lives. And that's really what I was conveying is like, you got somebody, you just got to tolerate it and make it go away. And then we'll get back to we'll take care of business. Right. So anyway, go ahead. Next one. Okay. So this Al built a module and Al, I think you named it Better Days.
Yep.
And what it really means is end of the line. And if you look in the back, those are deadline locomotives. They're going to be scrapped. And behind that is a backdrop, right? So they're all blurred out, but they're part of the scene. And then you have a John Deere tractor. You can see that kind of in the right background. And then you have a crawler with a boom winch, right? You can see that. But really the center of the story here is these four guys having a conversation. And this particular conversation is, how come you guys didn't get this scrapyard cleaned up sooner? It was supposed to be done 2 weeks ago. And here I stand before you, and the guy with his back to us, right? He's the one berating them. I see right here, I have a cab with a cab roof. You're leaning on it and you didn't get the job done. And now you have to work through the weekend to go and make sure this is done, because the general manager is going to come out here next week and all of this has to be cleaned up. And so that was the story. And then each of the three guys that are getting yelled at, I gave them a little chat line, in the story about their own point of view about this. And the fact that, I mean, look at the guy immediately to the left. He's got sort of the red thing with the floppy hat. He's kind of pissed off, right? And he's like slouched over, leaning on this rusty cab. And then the other guy who's leaning there, with his baseball cap, he's kind of pissed off. And then the other guy, this is just everyday working in manual labor, and we're not having a good day. And we're getting yelled at. And that was the story of this, right? But the fact that Al put this module together, and then I add a couple of things, like I added the John Deere tractor and the figures, and all of a sudden there's a story to be told. So that's what it was.
And that's what makes it so creative, Ben.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. Right on. Thank you. All right, next one. All right, so I made this little module, and I got a little overzealous with the grass. So I think it might have been Matt Wood who I follow him on Al's Facebook groups, and he does wonderful modeling, Michigan-based modeling, and I really like the work that he does with grasses. And so I went and got a bunch of those little tuft grasses, they're glue on the back and you just kind of plop them down. And I really got after it with this module. And, but I thought, well, okay, I can still make a scene out of that. So I got a backdrop, and you can see there's a sand house there. And then we got our guy with the broom. I called him Warranty in this particular one. The other guys, you've already seen Pierre Pants, and then Felix Sighted, I think, is the guy with the blue cap in this scenario. Felix Sighted, right? And then I had picked up very cheaply from Aaron Loyette at one of Al's meets that the rail truck on the right. Very judicious use of chain, I might add. That's for you, Al. We all love chains.
You never have too much chain.
You never have too much chain.
Chain is like money. There's no such thing as too much.
Exactly. But this again might have been a front end Friday representation. If I'm recalling the story, I talked about the fact that the line is very, very worn out. Nobody gets out there often. The crew came out to check on the building and the sand. Obviously, the sand is overflowing because there's been no locomotives out here. They're having a conversation. Warranty was brought out. He was told he had to clean things up, and he saw this ridiculous amount of grass, covering the rails, and they're getting ready. They got to figure out, you got to burn it off, or you got to bring some sort of weed whacker or something like that. So that's the conversation about the scene. And you have this rail truck off to the right, pretty much proving how long the grass is, right? So that, maybe I didn't have a lot of imagination that particular day, but I really like the module, and I, like I say, a little too much on the grass, but, frankly, I put it on my shelf and I stick one of those plexiglass things over it. It looks really cool. It looks lovely. We're going to keep it with the long grass. Right on. All right. This is fantastic. So Peter Reisiger, he's in Hamilton, Ontario. Very good friend. He built almost everything you see. He built this module. It's a logging module. He built the two logging disconnects. in the way in the background, the log truck, with the trailer, and you almost can't see a log on it. He built that. And I was fortunate to be able to get these from him. If I remember the locomotive, that might be a Sam Barbeau's locomotive, can't recall off the top of my head. And then the rail truck in the back is another Aaron Loyette. So what I have here was basically at work, action, stuff going on, stuff going in direct. They're going to the left. They're taking the empty disconnects back to pick up some logs. The log truck is bringing some logs in, the rail truck, so they can put them onto the disconnect. You got the logging truck and trailer in the way back. So there's a lot of activity. And again, the backdrop, you can't tell there's a backdrop, but that's a backdrop. And I think it makes so much difference. I guess I'm getting boring now saying that so many times, but there's little details here that just, to me, make all the difference. Right here in the foreground on the left, there's a sawed off tree stump. And then you got inside the little river, if you look really closely, you can see fish. There's fish in there. Just a lot of really cool details that Peter Reisiger made in this layout. He's a professional model builder, and he does this for fun. And I'm fortunate to be able to have him as a friend. So yeah, and I had a story to go with, the guys that are running this, running late and that kind of thing. Everybody wants to get home at the end of the day, that sort of thing. So that's one of my favorite models. And by the way, that's right here behind me. That module's right here. Yeah. All right, next one. Oh, another Peter Reisiger. So he scratch built this garage, which just blows my mind. It's anytime I see stuff like this. So here the story is, again, you look at the figures. Ian painted all these figures. The guy on the far left with the super long beard, that's an Andean model, 3D printed guy. We got the Texaco truck that Peter built. The Ford, I think that's a Model A, that there might be a Model T that he built. And all we have here is it's just a gas station in the 1920s, and conversations. Guys are talking. Yep. They're looking like, the guy shows up with a toolbox. He's like, wait a minute, I was supposed to fix something, but there's nothing here to fix. The other guy's, cleaning something off the hood of the car. Over the right, we're having a conversation. I don't know, what are we talking about? I can't remember what I put together, but it's a beautiful model. And by the way, it has a detailed interior. So, I have this on my shelf, and I take the roof off and you can see inside. It's absolutely gorgeous. So Peter Reisiger built this one as well. And that's another thing. I guess, Larry, you mentioned it. I really like having the best quality models that are out there. I cannot produce a model like that, but boy, I like having it. And I like having it on my shelf, and I get to look at it every day. And I like the fact that I was able to pay somebody for the skill to produce it, right?
And it's nice they find a good home.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. And my wife might think otherwise, but then again, she has a lot of shoes. So, yeah.
But it's also nice that you can take all of this great modeling art, as far as I'm concerned, and combine it with the figures, with the stories, and the creativity that you're bringing to this. You really are making that station come alive.
Yes, and that's a great point, because if there's no figures, no vehicle, it's just a static thing.
Yes.
It's a beautiful static thing, absolutely. But I think when we make it, and Phil Edholm, you came up with this concept of emotive modeling, and meaning there's emotions involved, and there's people, and there's interaction. And I like that, because that's what kind of motivates me, is I want to create something where there's stuff going on. And like we took a snapshot of what's happening at that moment in time today, today meaning 1922 or whatever it was, or 1946, whatever moment in time. It's a little a snapshot, and we're representing that with our models. And that's what I'm trying to achieve. And then I come up with a story that try to make sense of it all. Yeah. All right. Next one. Okay. So I frankly, I didn't make the still, but I love the still. And
Yeah.
so what I did here is these guys, it's a Sunday afternoon. So the way the story goes, gymnasium, there's the guy slouched over. He's on your right. He's got the sack in front of him, and he looks like he's maybe 2.5 sheets to the wind. And then we got Bill Fold, the guy in the back with the bottle up to, he's already drinking, he's still drinking. And then you got I think it's still Pierre Pants with the pipe in the front. And then Ron Chi is the guy completely passed out in the back. And so those 4 figures are they're an explanation of what do you do on a Sunday afternoon when there's college football or NFL, right? It's NFL if it's Sunday. But you don't have a TV because it's 1935. So what did you do on a Sunday afternoon when you didn't have NFL football to watch and drink beer with friends? You did this. You found the still and, oh, look, there's stuff that's there. And you went and got hammered all afternoon. And that's what this represents. And that's what the story was, that these guys kind of found themselves out there and they're just being guys and they're drinking too much. But they're having their Sunday afternoon, and they got the various levels of drink consumption as you go across the batch. All right, next. Oh, all right. So here, wow, the story was they're waiting for the local train to pick them up. They're done with the work day. And once in a while, by the way, if you look at the far right, holding the newspaper, that's Alan Littlefield. I like to slip in some of the Mid-Hudson guys into my stories because, frankly, we have a lot of fun with that. So Alan looks a little bit militant, right? Military with the hat on, and he's catching up on the news. Then you got Gymnasium sitting right there on next to him, and I can't remember all the guys' names, but basically they look tired. They've had a long day of work. They're kind of shooting the bull, catching up. Everybody's just waiting to get home. And until the train shows up, it's already late, right? Until the train shows up, they're just going to kind of chat about whatever's happened for the day and onward. So what I do is in the story, I mention the name of each one of them. And of course, the names are all going to be goofy. And a little bit about what their conversation is. So, they might be talking about hockey, or they might be talking about baseball, or whatever might be, whatever the news was that particular week. I would throw something in there, and that's what you got. So it's just a scene, captured a moment in time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Next one. All right. There you go, Ian. There's some sack handlers. So this is the door into the old Swill distillery in Soggy Bottom. And if you look, you notice there's an edge and the canal is right in front of us. You can't see the canal in the photo, but there is just to the left a riverboat that's delivering all these sacks of grain. And these guys are muscling all the sacks to get them into the building. And then you got the supervisor with the clipboard, making sure he's counting every sack that's coming in. The building itself, again, made by the Soggy Boys, as part of the layout, has a fully detailed interior. So the interior of a distillery is exactly what you'd expect, is all the equipment that you would need to make, alcohol, right? And then you got the guy who's trying to keep everything clean with the apron and the broom. So it's just a little scene in, I think the supervisor's name is Seymour Butts, because that's, why would it be anything but that? And then each of the guys has a funny name. And in the discussion, I would mention what they're, something they're thinking about. They want to get off shift and go to have lunch or something like that, just because that's what normal people do when they're, especially if you're carrying, 80-pound grains or sacks of grain, right? You're like, how long can this go? And what can I do as soon as I'm done? Right.
Yep.
So, all righty. Next one. Oh, yeah. So, Al Judy, you built this.
Yes.
This little car. Yeah, I love this.
Backwoods
gorgeous, Al.
Miniatures, 49 Plymouth, I think.
Yeah, really sweet. And it goes in both directions. It has no rear. It's got two front ends. And I love it. Oh my God. So first of all, look in the background. You got, we're in the, where the rail goes through a little bit of a city, or not a city, but a town. You got a building in the background. It's a hotel. And you can see somebody he's drinking a 12-ounce curl of some sort. And you don't know this, but I know this. That's Newell Sage behind the exhaust pipe of the car. And then next to him is Dan Walshin, and they're inspecting. They're just out there looking at stuff. But the guys in the foreground, so we got Geriatric, Benefactor, and I can never remember the guy's name with the rag. He just changed the oil, and he wants to tell these two guys this thing is ready to roll. And Benefactor, the driver in the left there, he's not convinced. There's something that was knocking or pinging or something like that. And so that's why the guy with the toolbox, that's mannequin. He's looking like, wait a minute, I fixed this thing. And now you're telling me it's not fixed, right? You can look at, you can't see their eyes, but you can, right? You can see and sense the conversation. There's a certain tenseness in the body language. And again, this is, when Ian paints these figures, this is what comes out. So these three guys are having a conversation, and it's not exactly going well. And you see what I mean? You see the look on the face. Mannequin, the guy with the toolbox, he looks a little irritated, frankly. And Benefactor, the guy who's expected to get in this thing and drive it away, is looking like, I don't really want to do that. I'm not ready to do that because I'm not convinced that you have done the repair that I asked for. And so that's what the conversation was. And that to me makes the scene kind of come to life because it's a unique vehicle. And I wanted to try to represent something. In this case, I called it an oil change, but it could have been any sort of repair, right?
And you're exactly right. It truly does come alive. There's just no other way to look at it. And the funny part for me is, you pick the right figures and you've got them placed in the right place for them in the module.
Yeah.
And that takes talent. I mean, that takes real thought and talent. I mean, you just don't lose some people standing there and say, I'm done. That's it. That's the same.
Yeah, definitely try to do that. Put some thought into it. And frankly, a lot of these, it probably fail at that. But when I saw this photo, I
think you're being way too modest. I don't think you fail at all. For you to take a model that Al Judy built, whoever built the building behind it, and take three figures out of no telling how many that you could have selected from Al. From Ian, and to place it all where you got it, and then be able to rationalize why they're there and why they look the way they do and why they're standing the way they are. That to me is extreme talent.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so same building backdrop essentially, and now you got remember I mentioned Dan Walshin and Newell. So Dan is on the left with the red sleeves and the blue overalls, hands in his pocket, playing pocket pool, and he's telling Newell something. Newell's standing on the back of that Porter, and I'm not sure if it's a good conversation or not, but it's grabbing the attention of some of the guys up on the porch. So you got one guy sitting on the steps on the left, and you got another guy leaning on the post drinking a beer. And they're kind of fascinated with the conversation. So, and frankly, I can't remember what this conversation was, but it was funny, right? And then way up in the top on the balcony, you got somebody looking off to the left, and then you got a cat sitting there. And then below where it says Don's Dry Goods, below there, you got an older guy with a cane walking out. So it's just a lot of action in the scene, but the story would have been the conversation between Dan and Newell,
Yeah.
right? And again, if I had a
Yingling.
yeah, I could read you the full script, but every one of these has a story. We'd be here all night. So anyway, all right, let's go to the next one. Oh yeah, this is so Gary Beatty is a brilliant modeler. He's out in Southern California. And I went and visited with him. I don't know, maybe
He's
6
actually
months
live.
ago.
He's actually listening at the moment.
Is
Ben.
he? Excellent.
Yeah,
Gary,
he's
we love
actually
you,
sent me a message.
all right. Gary, are you with Mike Hawk? Mike Hawk? That's what, sorry. That's a name that I might have made up, but there's a real human and he's a friend of Gary's. And I think he might be sitting with Gary right now. So outstanding. But Gary made this locomotive. Absolutely brilliant, beautiful, beautiful. And so the story here is we're at the end of the yard on the North Line. Remember, so we have a scrap yard out there, and the locomotive is there. And these two guys have been tasked with moving the locomotive. You got Larry Getzoff. He's the one flipping the bird, right? Because that's what Larry does. But I have to come up with a different story for every time I put Larry into a scene, because Larry's doing the same thing every time. And what we have here is basically these three guys were sent out to get this locomotive ready for scrapping, and none of them wants to do the work. So one of them's lighting up a cigarette. One of them sitting there basically telling the other guys, screw you. And the other guy, leaning with the glove and the blue cap is frustrated. And this is just a real moment in a day of a regular work day, right? And these are the dynamics among these three guys who have been tasked with doing a job that none of them wants to do, but they're supposed to get it done. And so that's what the story was. And again, the backdrop, you can see where the barrel behind the guy in the blue and the smoking, and then you have the railing. That's the end of this module, but I got a backdrop back there. So it kind of makes the thing look complete, right? From a photo composition, right? So, all right, next one.
Guys, I don't want to stop any of this. I think it's fantastic. But
Are we running out of time?
We're at 2.5 hours now. So
let's blow through these. Sorry, we're having too much fun.
I know. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I just want you to be aware, we're about halfway through the questions and we're at 2.5 hours.
All right. Well, let's real quick then. Alan Littlefield built this locomotive. Love it. And Ian painted the figures, and they're having a conversation. Next one. Oh, there's the locomotive from Gary. Fabulous. So I wanted to be able to post it so people could see the whole thing. And what happened here, the story was basically the Soggy Bottom locomotive, or the Soggy Bottom Railway, bought the locomotive from the Picacho del Diablo, Gary's company, and they brought it back, and these guys are getting introduced to it, and they're going to all figure out how to make the thing run, right? So that's what that particular story was. Next one. There we go. This is the star of this locomotive. Al Judy, you built this logging module, and basically I got a bunch of guys taking a break. They're all having lunch, smoking, eating, drinking, whatever, waiting for the day to move on. And so I wanted to star the locomotive, and there we are. All right, next one.
Oh, that's it. That's it. We're out of the photos. All right, pushing right along. Ben, the detail is just extraordinary. And it doesn't make any difference how many different people have built the different parts of it. The way that you have structured it is just fantastic, in my opinion. It is so creative, and the talent that you bring to your modeling. I'm a real fan. I'm really just impressed.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So can you tell me, do you research these scenes? Is this just out of your mind? I mean,
so Yes and no. So, I mean, I'm 61, so I've been reading a lot of stuff. Remember I mentioned all the books about Vermont and all the books about Colorado, and frankly, everything else I could get a hold of. So intuitively, I think all of us kind of have a pretty good level of base understanding of how railroads operate and what they do and how they do it. And so I'd say the research maybe had been done 30 years ago. But for a specific scene, yeah, I might, like if I want to put a Heisler or a Shea in there and it's a logging module, I might need to look something up and say, well, now, what type of locomotive to make sure I have the right Shea. You know, I don't want to be a rivet counter, but I also don't want it to be stupid. Like one time I had I did a photo with one of the Ian's painted figures. He was standing in the middle of the roadbed, right? In the grade, and somebody, and it was a photo, and the two guys are having a conversation, off the back of a caboose or something. And then I posted it, and somebody chastised me for saying nobody stands in the grade. I'm like, what? Who cares? Okay, did I know that? Sure, but are railroad employees going to stand in the grade? Yes. And so the way I answered the guy was I went and I researched and I found 4 photos of some railroad employees standing in the grade, and I sent him the photos and said, here you go. Anyway, so to answer your question, do I research? Yes, I don't want to post something that's factually inaccurate, but it's all about fun. So most of the time I do not care.
I think it's fantastic. I really do. Who are the people that have really influenced you? How did you get to the creative person you are today? I mean, who helped you?
So, all right, creativity, I guess it comes from, my parents, my mom and my dad, but there we go. These are the guys, and I was gonna say guys and gals, but they're all guys. These are the people, you can see them up there. These are now my new friends, in addition to Al and Larry and Ian. You got Ed filling up there on the left, Alan Littlefield, Dan Walsh, and they're the ones smoking the cigars over there on the right. Rick Bell, Sam Barbose, Mark Schreier. These are people that I've met in this community. There's Newell Sage and me. There's Gary Beatty down the bottom left. Yep. We had a great visit. And that's his layout behind the Punta Borracho. We drank beer and we ran trains. We had a ball. Art Bloomer right there in the middle. Larry, there you up there on the right. Dylan, yep. All these people have made an impact and have done something to influence me, make me a better modeler. Let's see what the next one is. There's a bunch. I mean, there's so many people. We're over to a layout. Well, hold on. There's a few more people I think I want to mention. John Weigel, Aaron Loyette, Steve Sherrill, right? I mentioned Peter Reisiger earlier, Carl Allison, Matt Wood, Steve Austin. Steve's in upstate Georgia, in the mountains of Georgia. He's not too far from me, a couple hours. Fabulous modeler. Dave Wingrove, Les Davis, we mentioned him. Gary Beatty, we mentioned. Jim Kellow, you've made an impact because you do shows like this. You give us all an opportunity to learn and meet other modelers and listen in. So thank you for that. You've made an impact. So that's what I would say. People that have influenced me. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. When you create one of your scenes, when in my terminology, when you build a model, create a scene, how do you know when it's finished?
I guess when it can tell a story that is somewhat complete, something that makes sense. Because if you think about it, I'm not necessarily building the models. I'm putting things together and making them into I'm combining things into a scene, and then I'm adding the figures to try to put a human interest or human nature interest into it. So as soon as I come up with what the conversation might be, what the scene could possibly represent, then it's done, right? And I want to try to make it not too long, 3 or 4 paragraphs maybe, and then it's done.
So really what you do is you create a scene, but you write a story about the scene. And as long as the scene shows your story, you're finished.
Yes, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I've never heard anybody express it like that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I wish I could admit to that too, and not say the 1,000 details.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I've always had trouble personally in looking at a model and deciding, okay, that's enough, I quit, I'll move on to something else. That's always been bothering me. And that's why I ask the question to everybody I can, to try to get a feel for how other modelers, what's their thought process when they sit back and look at it? How do they know that that's it? That's what I wanted to do.
Well, maybe it's, remember I'm in the software business, the technology business, and you're never 100%. The software is never, ever going to be 100% done. You have to get to about 85%, and then you just say, it's good enough to go. We're going to ship the software. People are going to buy it. And then we'll do updates as we go, right? And fixes. Everybody knows you get fixes on every single piece of software you've ever owned, right? That's the business. And I think that maybe that mentality comes in here. I look at stuff and I'm like, well, I got something to do in about 15 minutes. So I think I'm going to declare this done. Right.
The other 15% is job security, though, Ben.
Amen, brother.
I was going to say, Ben.
Let me try to approach it from a different way.
Okay.
Do you consider one of your scenes art?
Oh boy, so this was a interesting conversation I've had. So I used to say on a scale of 1 to 10, I was a 1, but that's probably not giving myself enough credit. So maybe I'm more like a 4 or a 5. If what I do is art, it would be more of a photo composition art. I can build models. Yes, I can follow directions and put kits together, and they're not going to be anywhere as good as the stuff that I can buy from my friends, right? I do enjoy building things. I like putting modules together, and I make dioramas, and you saw the stuff with the grass, right? I make things, but they're nowhere near as good as what Larry or Al can do. Or Steve Sherrill, or any of these other, Steve Austin, brilliant modelers. So if there's anything that I do that could be considered art, it's these scenes and the stories that go with them, and getting people that are looking at the photo and reading the scene story to have a chuckle. If I gave somebody a light moment in their day, then I think I've had a good day.
Gotcha.
Right.
Great answer.
Maybe that's art.
It's a great answer. You got any tips that you would give to a young modeler just coming into the hobby that, wants to build models and wants to create scenes?
You call Al Judy. That's what I did to get my ON30 empire started, right? My little empire. I guess though, seriously, I'd say, start small. In other words, we all would love to have a basement size layout, awesome, just running trains all day long, 15 of them going at the same time with digital control, but that's not how to start. So maybe the thing to do is say, all right, I'll build one building, and I'll get one little piece of track, maybe a foot long, and I'll put it on a little piece of foam, and I'll make a tiny little diorama. I don't know, maybe 1 foot by 2 foot, something like that. And I'm going to detail the hell out of that thing and weather it and make it as good as I possibly can make it. But then I've done something. I've started, and then from there, You can make a few more of those until you feel like hey, I really got this going. And then you could do an Al Judy 4x4 layout. All right, I can do something with, 2 different lines running at the same time, or maybe build something that might be modular, and you can join a local group that's in a modular. It could be any scale, right? There's modular N scale or HO scale, ON30. They're all the scales have modular groups. But if you start small, you're not going to be overwhelmed. I think that would be a great way to start. And then, frankly, listen, look at YouTube. You can learn very, very easily how to weather something, how to paint it, how to model it, how to build it, if you don't want to read the directions,
I totally agree. Start small, do a micro.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, throw it away, right?
Yeah, right. Start over. Right.
But if you try to build a 30-foot long by 15-foot wide layout, you can't start again. It's too much.
More people have left the hobby because of that mistake than any other reason. They always they see it in the magazine and think they can build it with zero experience. Don't even know how to put a piece of track together. Yeah, you need to start with a grass mat and an oval track on a piece of plywood. learn how to put the track down and make the train run before you worry about 3D printing.
Yeah, and on a level of 1 to 10, that would be the 1. There we go.
Hey, but if you can't lay track, you're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, or can't wire it. It's not going to.
That's right. Can't wire it.
Right.
So you got to start with the basics. So
yeah,
and start small. Just start.
That's
small.
right. Yep.
Great advice, guys. Great advice. Well, listen, we've been here for a while this evening, and I'm afraid that it's drawing to an end for us for this show. So let me start with the friends one at a time. Al, you got any final words that you'd like to say?
I just wanted to say thanks for inviting me, Ben. I appreciate it. Jim, thank you.
Sure.
Ben, I enjoy your little stories and your front end Fridays and your side view Saturdays and all the others. I get a kick out of the story. So keep it up.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Al, I'll say one thing. I think that we have seen, while you call him a competitor, because it's obvious where he goes when he sees something that's a beautiful model, you're going to be in competition with him.
That's right.
Oh yeah, baby.
Al, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes, sir. Well, Larry, how about you? Any last words?
Thanks, Ben, for inviting me. Love to have you over at my house. It's fun to have you try to convince me to sell off stuff I don't want to sell. Thanks, Jim, for having me here, and thanks everybody. And start small and keep building your skills. That's all I got to say.
Right on. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you so much, Larry. Ian, how about you? Any last words?
With Ben speaking so much, I can't get a word in edgewise. I came up with a thought, Ben.
Yes.
I think of you more as a movie director.
Huh. Okay.
And that's how, like a Peter Jackson. Now, Peter Jackson couldn't put a bigger chore together. He couldn't build a wetter sword if you'd saved him. But he started model making. He was a model maker. And,
right.
It doesn't matter. You create a story, and that's what a movie director does. So that's my thing on. And mate, I got to sell more figures to you. No, it's been a pleasure being here with you, mate. You're a gentleman, and it's. I thank you for your kind words and all that sort of thing, mate.
All right, thank you, Ian.
Thank you so much, Ian. Really do appreciate your time. Well, Ben, it's been a little while since we started this show tonight, and you've got some fantastic friends, but it's your turn to have the last word.
Well, thank you. First of all, thanks for taking the time, and frankly, thanks for having this show that you host. It means a lot, and I enjoy viewing every one of them. And thanks for having me on this one. And I've said I started with it, and I've said it several times, with fun. That's what it's all about for me. That's what this hobby is. And I hope it's fun for everybody else too. We get to create things in miniature. We get to play with trains. We get to investigate prototypes. We get to ride the rails, of the ones that still exist. We get to make up scenes on our layouts, our modules. We get to do this with input and help and support from our friends. And when we get together in person, we get to drink adult beverages and have a whole lot of fun. And we do it for hours and hours and hours. And so that to me is, if it's not fun, not worth doing. This is a whole lot of fun, and I love doing it. And my friends, Al and Ian and Larry, and frankly, all the other friends that I've been able to make all these years, that's what motivates me to keep doing this and to continue and to buy new things and try to increase my skills, and to sit with Dan Walshin for 3 straight hours and learn how he weathers things, and to talk to Alan Littlefield. How did he put together and scratch build a locomotive? I mean, that's fun. We have a ball when we do this, and I hope everybody does. However they model, I hope it's fun like that. So that's what I would say. Fun.
Well, Ben, it's been a real honor for me to be here tonight with you and your friends. As I said a little bit ago, I'm a real fan. I think you're one of the most creative people that we have in the hobby. I think the scenes that you make, the stories that you develop around those scenes, and the way that you present the hobby of model railroading, I think it's fantastic, and I'm so happy to be able to meet you and to talk to you this evening. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jim. My pleasure. Enjoyed it.
And thanks to everybody that was watching live on YouTube. I hope you also enjoyed it, and hope you learned something about our hobby from Ben and his friends. Because as I say, I think he's one of the most talented modelers that we have today. And I hope that that we were able to make that point and have that come through loud and clear in the show. Hope you do subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you'll not miss any other shows that we have. Hope you'll subscribe to our website, newtracksmodeling.com. Donate to our scholarship if you can, and subscribe so that you can join us live on the Zoom shows that we have every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And with that said, thank you so much for being here. Hope to see you on our next show. And until then, happy modeling to all of you.